Yeah, I mean, if you bought, a dozen plain stock Toyota Corollas and then they weren't in your possession, I mean, people might accuse you of being a car dealer.
Sure. We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about a newly released ATF warrant. This was the warrant to search and seize the home, vehicle, and property of Brian Malinowski, who was unfortunately shot and killed during the execution of this warrant for being an unlawful seller. We're going to talk to you about what exactly, because we've read the warrant now, what exactly put him on ATF's radar to investigate, how you stay off an ATF radar, and finally, we're going to talk about a little update on the ATF's new private rule for engaging in the business, how all of us could be unlawful sellers now. But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button. And we have started a shorts channel. So if you want something with a little different format, some more breaking news, we are linking it here. Subscribe.
And we've covered this topic before. We'll link the video in the description below. This is a tragic case out of Arkansas. We have an airport administrator who gathered the ire of the ATF. They executed a search warrant on his residence. Now, we went through, this is a pretty long search warrant. We went through it, so you don't have to. We're going to be talking about that in just a moment. But there's a lot of questions in the air that I think would be resolved, except that the agents in this case were not wearing bodily worn cameras.
Yeah, it's amazing how, because like most states have laws that say your police officers have to wear their body cams and they have to activate them. I mean, in Texas, it's actually like it is in the occupations code. We actually have a law that says that police have to activate their body worn cameras. But it's funny how the federal government gets held to a different standard.
Yeah, let's see Mr. Dettelbach getting put through the paces here.
Try to convince the American people you don't have the do-re-mi to put body cameras on your agents that are conducting 11,000 warrants. These are dangerous. You've got 11,000 of them out there, and you had a budget last year of $1.672 billion with a B. And you're telling me, I'm sorry, folks, I can't provide this transparency to the American people. I can't because I don't have the budget to do so. The American people, there's a problem right now with law enforcement out there. And I have the picture and the image of every law enforcement officer that's been killed in the past 3.5 years, and there's way too many. There's way too many on my wall.
We agree.
And so we have body-worn cameras, and why do we do that? Because there is a lack of trust between the police and the communities they serve. So when you provide these cameras, there's no he said, she said. It's all on record. And you didn't have your body cameras on that day, I'm telling you, it stinks to high heaven. I highly recommend you cooperate with this committee and you try to explain, other than this, I don't have the money to do so and I'm phasing it in. Buddy, you got to get your priorities, reshuffle your priorities and get your priorities in order. And I highly recommend you get body cameras on every one of those individuals that are searching these warrants, because it seems like there's a cover up here.
Billion. 1 billion with a B. And they can't afford a body camera.
No, it really is outrageous. There is, in the year of our Lord 2024, there is no reason you should be executing a no-knock warrant as a federal official without a body-worn camera. There should have been, I mean, how many agents do you think were there on scene?
I mean,
a dozen or more, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say closer to 50, but
there should be as many cameras as there were agents, and there are zero.
Yeah, that's
unacceptable.
Unacceptable is the right word for that. Now, going to this, how do folks get on the ATF's radar? How do you stay off the radar, and where we're at with the law as far as engaging in the business goes? We poured through this search warrant affidavit, heavily redacted also, but there's some things that jump out at us that I think our folks could benefit from just looking at it.
Yes. So let's talk first about how this gentleman wound up on their radar. And I will say, the fact that he is dead over this is just so heartbreaking and so outrageous and so just beyond the pale, because we don't know what happened, and we're not going to know what happened because there were no cameras. But had he called our office and said, this is what I'm doing, am I acting within the bounds of the law? Our answer would have been no.
Yeah, it probably could be cut it out.
Yeah, it would be stop doing what you're doing. You're acting as an
And
unlawful seller. Now, you don't get the death penalty for that.
no, and what I'll say is, and this is not don't take that to mean, hey, we think folks shouldn't be able to engage in private sale, or
No,
even
that's
should
not
we
what we mean.
require federal firearms license in the first. Absolutely not.
Richard hears the comments before they happen.
I do.
No, it's not our agreement or disagreement with this particular law. It's was he violating this particular law? And the answer is yes.
Are men going to show up to your house with guns to enforce a law that exists, and we have to
tell
contend
you
with
yes.
reality? And yes, the answer is yes. And
So-
it happened.
Good disclaimer. So, how did he start the process of getting on their radar? Very strangely, actually. So it appears that a confidential informant in Canada took photos of firearms that he somehow came into contact with. And we have no idea whether they were his, whether he was at a friend's house and saw this pile of guns. We have no information. And we know the Canadian authorities did not actually possess these firearms. They simply had photos, looked at the serial numbers, traced the serial numbers, ding, 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 Brian Malinowski. And this information gets communicated from Canadian police to ultimately the ATF, although there's also some participation from police in Little Rock as well. I mean, all the agencies are working together, but we start there. And at that point, people start to get interested and say, what else is he doing? And then what do they find?
So we dig in a little bit further, and we find out kind of the next piece or domino in this tragedy is they start looking at how many firearms did he acquire. In this case, they looked at a 3-year period. He had bought about 150 guns, which, I mean, I've known people who have done that.
We might work with people who have bought that many over a short period of time,
But
maybe. But
I mean, that's
it's a lot. It's a lot of guns.
Right now, what the police are doing is they're building probable cause. They're saying probably, more likely than not, and we can articulate why this person is committing a crime, in this case, engaging in the business and selling firearms without a federal firearms license. So we could see how that domino might fit into that search warrant affidavit.
Right. It's all they're putting it all together. So lots of firearms purchased, no law against that, but lots of firearms purchased, 24 or 25 of them, the exact same model of Glock.
That's how you get on the radar.
That's how you get on the radar. Again, no law against that. I can own as many Glock 19s as I care to.
Sure.
However, if I buy 25 of them over the course of a year, that's going to raise some flags, right? Because they're going to say, what, does she just shoot a different Glock 19 every day, right? Why do you have that many?
Yeah, I mean, if you bought, a dozen plain stock Toyota Corollas and then they weren't in your possession, I mean, people might accuse you of being a car dealer.
Sure, I might suffer said accusation. So we've got that issue to contend with as well. And then as they're coming up with all this information and getting very, very interested in, right, ding, 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 he's an unlicensed seller, what starts happening?
Well, they start tracing some, and this is standard protocol. Police, they find a firearm at a crime scene. Maybe there's no suspect. I would say it happens more frequently in that scenario. Sometimes if the person is found in possession of the firearm, they'll still do it about half the time. But let's say we don't have a suspect. They perform what's called a firearms trace. And what a firearms trace is, they go back to the manufacturer and say, hey, Glock, who did you give these guns to? They go to the distributor. Hey, distributor, what gun store did you sell these guns to? Gun store to. Go to the gun store. Hey, gun store, let's see your 4473s. Who was the point of sale? Who was the actual purchaser of these firearms? Well, then they start seeing his name pop up over and over and over again upon performing some of these traces.
Right. So they're like, and mostly, I mean, they're finding them in all sorts of places, but in pretty quick succession, they pull over 3 different people, search the car because of the odor of marijuana, which is why, if you're wondering why the police always want marijuana to be illegal, which, my opinion varies on that. As a criminal defense attorney, I say legalize it, but then as kind of a human being who doesn't want my
As
shit
a driver
stolen
on the
all
streets
time,
in Houston, I stay.
I know, right? But right, police, they always want marijuana to be illegal. Why? Because they pull you over, they smell marijuana. It is the easiest way to search your entire car without a warrant. So they're pulling over lots of people all over the country, smelling marijuana, searching their cars, finding Malinowski guns, right? So that does not help him here. And then, in addition, right, so they're finding these guns, and they start their undercover operation where, in fact, they're seeing him at gun shows, and then
Setting up a booth.
setting up a booth. They've gotten undercover, go talk to him. And, and he's acting as an unlawful seller. He's like, oh, you want this one? I don't have that one, but I'll get it for you and I'll sell it to you. Right. I mean, what else?
Yeah, I mean, pulling things out of like new guns, never fire. Not saying that it's illegal to buy a gun, never fire it, decide you hate it, and sell it. But whenever you're doing it repeatedly,
Right. And the totality of these
and the
circumstances.
totality,
right?
yeah, we start looking at these things. So, these guns showing up at potential crime scenes, the volumes of purchases, the turning around these things in quick succession after purchasing them, the same guns. You see how these things start stacking up.
Right.
The blips on the radar start going off.
Yes. Although they do add something in here that I think is actually like just legal advice that I give people all the time on the private sale of guns now, is that they make a point to add that when he's dealing with the undercover, he says that the transaction is cash, no papers. Like,
Yeah, cash.
yeah,
Cash
that's
is king.
quote Emily Taylor, if you are going to engage in a private sale, cash, no papers. Because the ATF is going after people who are not actually unlawful sellers and calling you unlawful sellers. And how are they doing that? By tracing your bill of sales. I mean, that's like a good way to document that you
No, you use
made
your
a
central bank
profit.
digital currency, you use your mark of the beast, you scan your barcode, and you trade the gun so the government knows.
Yep, that's right.
And schizophrenic.
Anyway, so, but yes, all of these things, they put all of these things together. And mind you, this is not an arrest warrant. However, this is to search his vehicle, it's to search his home. They want all of the standard things, right? They want his electronics, they want to look at his cell phone, they want to look for paper records, receipts, they want his actual firearm inventory, right? Or I guess what some people would call his personal collection, but
Sure.
they're calling sort of, his inventory as an unlawful seller. They want it all. It's all in here. And then the warrant is in fact signed and placed under seal so that he is not notified ahead of time such that he could destroy evidence or flee.
But I think, yeah, we still got important things to talk about, staying off the radar, and where we are at with the change in the rule on engaging in the business. What is your advice to folks generally, when we're talking about, let's not get on the ATF's radar?
Yeah, and not to be glib about this warrant and about what happened to him, but basically you can take everything alleged, like do the opposite of what this guy did, right? And that's what I'll tell people, like, don't buy multiple of the same gun unless you have a darn good reason to. Like, you want to buy his and hers Glock 43s for, husband and wife, fine. Know that you are going to be reported to the ATF because you bought 2 pistols within 5 business days. They're going to see that it's 2 of the same. Are you going to get a phone call about that, or are you not? Your guess is as good as mine. Don't buy multiple of the same gun. Don't buy 2 guns in more than 5 days. Those are good things to start. What else?
I mean, we talked about cash. We talk about, I'd say, who you're selling guns to matters. If you know the
Yes.
person, if it's a family member, friend, acquaintance that you know well, as opposed to stranger on the internet or stranger on the street, that kind of changes. I will just say police are more likely to come into possession of a firearm if you sell it to a complete stranger than if you sell it to your buddy you've known your entire life.
Right. And, gosh, I mean, the best advice that we could give you is just don't sell your guns. Don't sell your guns.
Stockpile.
Stockpile them. There are troubling times ahead. Best way to stay off their radar. So, but let's talk about, selling your guns, because we've talked a lot on the channel here about ATF's new rule that came down on being engaged in the business, turning all of us as private sellers into licensed dealers. And we have an update. What's that update, Richard?
It's a restraining order.
Woo!
So we're starting to see temporary our restraining orders, and I imagine temporary injunctions start to land on this engaging in the business rule. That's where courts have said, hey, guess what? We're going to keep status quo while we litigate this thing. Temporary injunctions, we imagine the courts are going to say, hey, guess what? You're likely to succeed on the merits of these things. This is just in the state of Texas right now, but we imagine that these things are going to expand elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually like shout out Ken Paxton, because
Yep.
this lawsuit was filed with multiple states as plaintiffs, multiple attorneys general, and the court found the only state that established proper standing was Texas.
Don't you mean future U.S. Attorney General?
I know, for real. So, I mean, Well done. Now, other states will start to roll in. You know, it's not that Texas is in any way differently placed than these other states. Texas just articulated it better, and we met the standard.
Yeah.
So y'all can do it too.
Yeah, and what I imagine, this is what happened with the pistol arm braces. First, it just applied to a small group of people. Think GOA members, think people who are employed by the state of Texas. That happened at the preliminary or the temporary restraining order stage. And then when we got to the preliminary injunction, it expanded. It became nationwide. So I hope that relief is on the way to the rest of the country.
I sure hope it is. So, I mean, for the time being, if you are anywhere else but Texas, check out the videos that we are going to link in the description here about how to keep yourself safe. Texans, I still say cash, no papers, but
But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
and please question and comment for us below. And until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.